We're with Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison from Texas. She's the only female senator since 1993 from Texas, and she's here as a guest of the Houston World Affairs Council to talk about her latest book, The American Heroines, The Spirited Women Who Shaped Our Country. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
I know that you wrote, this is your second book. Mm-hmm. The first book you wrote, it was about the 9 women senators. Now there's more. But tell me how this book came about.
Well, first, I have always wanted to write a book. And the editor who worked with us on 9 and Counting, the book about the women senators, said, "Would you like to write another book?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I've got the book that I want to write." And I wanted to chronicle the women who have broken barriers in so many different fields in our country. And I wanted to acknowledge that, A, this is the best place in the world to be a woman, and B, that because women have been a part of the evolution of our country, it has made our country the strongest one on earth.
Now, you were the first also female reporter here in Houston with KPRC, Channel 2. Did this book bring the reporter out of you again?
Oh, absolutely. The interviews were so much fun for me because I was able to talk to people about what are their traits for success, what are their most important experiences, to give our young women and young men a kind of a roadmap for what it will take to be successful in sports or in aviation or in education. And I think the interviews are just as interesting as the biographies. And I saw a difference, really, in the early women breaking barriers. Usually they didn't see their successes. They had no encouragement. They were fighting to get what they were interested in. It was very lonely, and they never really saw things come to fruition. But what they didn't realize is they were laying the groundwork so that the next generation really could achieve the dreams. And in the interviews you see that the women who are still breaking barriers in those same fields are seeing their successes. So you see the Madeleine Albright and the Condoleezza Rice, and you see how much they have been able to achieve, but they probably wouldn't have gotten there if Ovida Kalbhavi hadn't been in President Eisenhower's cabinet. So these are the things that I tried to bring out in the book.
The trailblazers. Which woman do you think had the most impact on you? I mean, you featured so many women. Did you learn something new?
I grew from writing this book. I grew from seeing the different circumstances, the different traits in women in different fields that allowed them to succeed. And it was the overall book that had the impact. And what it said to me, when I look at the book and I'm talking to young people and I say, every woman in this book failed. Everyone. The reason they succeeded is because they picked themselves up, they dusted themselves off, and they kept on going. And it is learning from your failures that determines your ultimate success. And that's what really came together to me as I saw the pioneer women and then the contemporary women.
Now, you start the book by a quote by Alexis de Tocqueville, the Frenchman, who credits the superiority of women as to why America was so prosperous and growing. Do you think that women are superior to men in some areas?
Well, I think what de Tocqueville saw in American women was so interesting because he said there's a spirit, there's an independence in American women that I don't see in European women. And I think what he was saying is that has really added to this democracy experiment, which is what it was. De Tocqueville came here in the late 1700s. He wrote in 1835, and he said, these women are different. Well, they are different, and they were different then, and we're different now in this respect. We have been educated. We have been a part of our country's freedom fights. We've been a part of our country's economy. We've been a part of our country's cause-driven society, and our country is stronger because of it. And I think that, of course, men have certain skills and women have certain skills, and they excel in different areas, but by including 100% of our talent, our country has become the best on earth. And when you compare that to societies in which women have not been educated, have been repressed, and even abused, you see what a loss they have suffered.
That's true. One of the most interesting stories that I read that I didn't know anything about was a Native American woman, Sarah Winnemucca. Mm-hmm. Did she strike you as much as she did me as far as the amount of forbearance and faith in her people and faith in peace?
She kept her spirit. She kept her positive attitude. But I think that Sarah Winnemucca is one of those examples of a woman who was trying to achieve what she thought was right, which was peace with the Americans who were coming into her country, her territory. But she had to meet the resistance of her own people and also see that she was really right, and she had to keep that focus, which she did. She wanted to have the Indians be treated well in a partnership with the white people. And her people accused her of being a traitor to their cause. They didn't trust her, many of them, and yet she was right, and she was trying to do the right thing, but she was doing it with almost no encouragement. And that was so symptomatic of many of the women in this early era who were, for instance, Emma Willard, who was trying to assure that girls would get a public education. This was the late 1700s, early 1800s. She fought for public education for girls. Now, she didn't see her dream come true, but everything she did and the private schools where she educated young women to go out and be teachers proved her point, and it was very shortly after her era that girls got a public education too.
Now, most of the women that you featured, you could say all of them, faced some sort of discrimination, whether it was racial, religious, just by nature of their gender. What do you think, what did you learn about discrimination and how you can overcome it?
I learned a couple of things. First, that it's the positive attitude, it's the never give up mentality, and it's the spirit that has allowed these women to overcome some discrimination. And it's also, I think, one of the best pieces of advice came from Barbara Walters. She said, oftentimes, young women say to her, well, I don't get paid as much as he does, or I'm not getting the same opportunity that she does. And Barbara Walters basically says, I'll have none of that. What you have to do is make yourself invaluable. You're dealing with tough people, and these people don't care about your individual personal rights. They care if you're going to add to their bottom line, to their overall product. So you make yourself invaluable, and then you negotiate from strength. Now, she's not saying don't stand up for your rights, but what she's saying is, let's don't whine. Let's find the way that we can move forward, and the way to do it is to work hard and make yourself invaluable and negotiate from a position of strength. And I think that is a strain I see throughout the women in this book. They didn't give up, they didn't whine, they didn't say, oh, I'm not being treated right. They just figured a way that they were going to be treated right, and they were going to make it happen.
They became indispensable. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to ask you the same questions you asked in your book. Now, you came up with these questions, correct?
Yes, I did.
So I'm going to ask you the same questions. The most important trait for success, what do you think it is?
It's perseverance.
Perseverance.
Yes. Most people give up when they're down. And I think perseverance, the ability to see that you have, that you can reach a goal in a circuitous route rather than a straight line. If you learn from experiences, you'll be better. If you learn from your failures, you'll be better than people who succeed all the time. That's my major trait. And I do have enormous energy, and I have a spirit that you just almost can't put down. So I would say those are my traits as well.
I understand you're also a workaholic.
Yes,
you work very hard.
I am.
Hard worker. And you got them from your father.
Yes, exactly. I did. I never give up. I'm always the last one at the committee meeting to make sure that Texas gets that appropriation. I do work hard, and I saw my father work 7 days a week, and he never complained. He never said, oh, I don't do Saturdays, I don't do Sundays. He worked. And I saw that, and he was such a good man. And I thought, gosh, that's the way you get ahead. You do what's right, and you work hard, and you win.
Out of all the women, the most interesting answer to me was Jackie Joyner's answer. It said generosity as an important trait for success. I had never heard that from anyone, from all the women.
And she is. You know, here she was. She grew up in the tenements. She saw a man murdered in her front yard when she was a young girl, and she had no advantages whatsoever, but her mother kept saying, I don't care about sports. I want you to learn. I want you to be educated. That's your ticket to freedom. And she never listened to her mother. But when her mother died, when she was 17, all of a sudden she remembered everything her mother said, and she started changing her life and doing the things that her mother had told her to do. Now, she still excelled in sports, of course,
sure.
but she did get her education. And she went back to East St. Louis, and she raised money in a foundation to put in a community center for the young kids in the area where she grew up so they would have a better chance than she did. She walks the walk and talks the talk.
Back.
She gave back. She's wonderful. There was another one that was interesting that was a little different. Almost all of us said perseverance, but the two women in journalism, the first thing out of their mouths, different interviews, all the interviews were separate, curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
What's your
Barbara
most
Walters,
important trait? Curiosity. Cokie Roberts, same thing. So that shows that they were born to be a journalist.
That's right,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Biggest obstacle you faced in your career?
It was not being able to get a job when I graduated from law school.
1967.
Yes, I came to Houston, Texas, had my law degree, saw all of my male student friends get jobs. I could not get a job. I looked for 4 months. It was so, it was depressing at the time. It was disheartening because no law firm hired women. But this is where perseverance came in. I decided, well, I'm going to use my law degree in a different way. And on a lark, I stopped by a television station, KPRC, and I walked up to the counter, the receptionist, and I said, I'd like to talk to someone about a job. And she said, what kind of job? And I said, well, news reporter. And she said, oh, do you mean you want to talk to the news director? I said, oh, yes, right, news director. I mean...
It was Ray Miller.
It was Ray Miller. And he actually came out and talked to me and said, we've never had a lawyer apply to be a news reporter. We've also never had a woman. This may be the right thing. And he said, I don't have an opening, but please don't take another job until you've talked to me again. And about 2 weeks later, I did have a job offer to be an attorney on the staff of the city attorney of Houston. And so I called Ray Miller, and he said, oh, you're returning my call. He said, I've called to offer you a job as a news reporter here covering the legislature and the courts. And I said, great. Oh, I was so excited. And so I took the job. I called my father, and I said, Dad, I've got a job. He said, oh, I'm so excited. This is wonderful news. Where? And I said, with KPRC. And he said,
What's
what? What do you mean? He was appalled that I would become a news reporter. And he even said, well, for radio or TV? I said, I don't know.
You still didn't know, that's right, because they had radioactive.
So, things happen that turn out for the best if you just keep on going.
One door opens, another one closes, right? Best preparation for a rough and tumble of life?
I think the best preparation was, first of all, wonderful, supportive parents. I never, ever had a moment of doubt in my upbringing. It was idyllic. And so I came from a strong base of thinking that I could do anything. And then they assured and insisted that I get an education. It was never a question in my little hometown, even of Lamarck, that I would go to college. And so the insistence on education and the support, I think, gave me the foundation. But you only get the ability to go with the rough and tumble of life through experience, overcoming adversity.
You came up with this question, and I found that very interesting. Why did you ask the women about the best negotiating strategy? Why did you feel you had to ask that question? And I would like to know what you think about that.
Because negotiating is so much a part of success in whatever you do. And even women who, like Sally Ride, who you would think, now, where would she be negotiating? Well, you negotiate in a committee meeting. You negotiate in your, if you're doing any kind of a contract, anything you do includes negotiation. And we don't have that in our curriculum. We don't have how to put your best case forward and then react to someone else's. And my best negotiating tactic is usually to try to make both sides win. It's to make sure that the other person feels good about the deal. But you have to have what you need to. And usually you can find a common ground. I find that certainly in the legislative process, we're negotiating all the time. And if I'm chairman of a committee and we're trying to get a bill out, I want everybody to win. So I try to do something where people are happy.
You're more of a conciliator. Helpful childhood memory?
That would be hard for me, except I think probably my helpful childhood memories would be the support of my parents when something bad happened. Now in your childhood, the something bad is, it could be, in my life, it wasn't serious. In Jackie Joyner Kersey's life, the worst thing that happened to her was serious. It would be the death of her mother or where she lived, being subject to so many
obstacles in life.
Yes, just living. Mine wouldn't have been in that category, but to me, the big deal would be if I didn't get the lead in the school play or whatever.
Right.
And so it would be the support that my parents gave me and the working with my parents and helping them and having that go the extra mile mentality that I was brought up having. This is a small thing, but I was not a cute child. I had friends, and whenever we would be doing things together, our ballet class or our school coronation, they would be the darling ones, and I was kind of homely. I was truly kind of plain. And so
I can relate.
I learned that you have to do more. You can't be a pretty face, because I wasn't a pretty face. And so you have to always try harder.
Right.
And that goes in the little early things, but then that also sets the pattern for the bigger things, where today, as a United States Senator, I go the extra mile. I do everything I can to help my cities or my constituents or people in trouble or whatever it is.
Whatever
and
you can
get
do.
it early, and it just happens that that was one kind of memory that I had that helped me with that mentality.
Advice for women who want to be like Senator Hutchison when they grow up?
Well, my advice would be to do some things that I didn't do and some things that I did. I would study hard and be the best educated you can be. I didn't take advantage of all of my educational opportunities, and I think that was a loss. But I think it is very important, if you want a political career, to have life experience before you go into politics. You need to be in a career in either a profession or a business, so you know what people need. You know what makes the economy tick. Otherwise, you're not very valuable, and you don't have a compass. You don't have a clear vision of what you want to do and what your philosophy is. I see the people not being successful when they don't have a clear view of what they believe and what's right for this country. You only get that through experience in having another career. It also makes you more independent. If you rely on an elected office, then you're going to want it too much, and you're going to do anything to keep it. That's not the kind of person you want in public office. You want someone who's willing to do what's right, even if it's against the popular view, because they know in their core what they think is the right thing. And then if you lose, you have something else to do. You don't rely on this public office for your life.
Your identity.
Mm-hmm.
You have two small children,
yes.
Houston and Bailey,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
They're 3 years old?
Yes, they're both 3.
They're both 3.
Mm-hmm.
I understand your thoughts about public television changed after you had your children.
This is true. I have not ever been in the forefront of saying that we should do away with federal funding, but my general view has been that now, in this era, we have so many options in cable that we shouldn't be giving federal subsidies to PBS. Well, I have found as a parent that there's not a cartoon network that puts values in their curriculum or their programming like PBS. The educational and values in Sesame Street, it has caused our young people to have a much better start in life. And there is no comparison in the open market. I see all the others. And even if it's one that's good, like Disney, Disney's good sometimes, but then it's not always geared to children. And so it's eclectic. Now, PBS is too. It's so informative as well as children. But every animated cartoon that PBS has, I know my children can watch, and they're not going to get some skewed, weirdo kind of language or behavior.
You feel safe. You can leave your children there and feel they're safe.
Mm-hmm.
And people have asked you about running for governor, and you don't have an answer yet. Would you ever be interested in being president of the United States?
At one time, I certainly was interested. And not that you ever decide you're going to run for president, but I certainly had it on my radar screen. But I don't see that now. I don't.
Do you know why you don't see it?
Well, my children, for one thing. I really want to be closer to them. It could be that after they're a little older, I might. But right now, I don't see it. I could see running for re-election to the Senate. I could see running for governor. And I can see retiring and doing something in business, which I think would be wonderful. But what you would have to do to be president in this time frame, in the age of my children, would not be something I would pursue.
As a public servant, what do you think you want your legacy to be?
Well, first of all, I want to be known as one of the best senators Texas has ever had. And I think the most important areas where I've contributed are, first, I have focused on bringing research dollars to Texas, to our great institutions of higher education. I really think that we must put more emphasis on higher education to remain the best. And I think Texas has a way to go, and I think we can do it because we have some of the best minds in the world in our institutions. We have the research capability. Right here in Houston, we have Rice, we have MD Anderson, we have Baylor College of Medicine, we have UT. We've got so many attributes, and University of Houston has some real potential. And I want to bring that out. I want to bring more scientists, more National Academy members, and I've actually started a state organization of National Academy members in science, engineering, and medicine. And it's supported by the heads of all of our research institutions. And it's to bring more awareness of Texas as a science state. That's number one. Number two, my interest in the military, strengthening the military, making sure that our military stays strong and that the people of our country support what we're doing. It's so important. Our young men and women are protecting our freedom for the opportunities for our children and grandchildren. And I want to make sure that they have everything they need to do the job we're asking them to do.
Senator Bailey Hutchison, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was wonderful. I appreciate it.
For more information on upcoming programs or guests, you can contact the Houston World Affairs Council at 713-522-7811 or check their website at www.houstonworldaffairs.org.